we replaced the lamb for cricket mints from Yumbug. And I think it's 17 times less carbon.
Once we've installed solar panels, we know what we can generate. Once we've returned on the initial capital investment, then effectively we're generating electricity for free.
But from the forum, I personally, I love coming to the meetings. It is really inspiring, really energizing. I think the forum is different to others because it's focused on action.
A fertiliser, which then is used on our fields for wheat generation, that's then harvested by one of our companies that's turned into flour that goes back to make our dough.
Because we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about big problems, we need to come together to come at solutions and come up with solutions for these massive problems.
Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar series we're running on the transition, how to thrive in a post 1.5 degree world. I'm here today in Pizza Pilgrims with Thom Elliot, founder. We're in a pizzeria, there might be some background noise. Well, let's jump straight into it. Tell us, what's your journey on sustainability? Where did it all begin? How's it woven into the fabric of the business or not? And how are you conceiving it?
It's really interesting. So we obviously started the business. It was 12 years ago last week that me and my brother sold the first pizza on that market stall. And I think it's safe to say that sustainability in terms of the environment element was very low down the list of things that we were concerned about. It was much more incidental stuff, like had we scratched the enterprise hire van and was that going to cost us £1,000, which was our entire weekend's profit? Or did we remember to take the cheese to the Isle of Wight festival or that kind of stuff? Was it snowing today?
So straight into, I'm setting up a business. I need to get my business right.
Yeah.
And the other stuff,
yeah,
I might care about it as an individual, but if I put that front and center, it might jeopardize my operational stuff.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any, I couldn't look at you and honestly say that we had it anywhere near our sort of business plan when we started out. It was not on the, I could pull up the first business plan we ever wrote and amongst the millions of just errors and potentially lies in it, there is not one mention of sustainability.
Right. And is that true of both environmental sustainability and kind of people and community? And
I would say people and community always was much more there, but not from a sort of sustainability point of view. Like I guess, in order to sustain something, you have to have something. And I think at that point, we didn't have anything. We were building something.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it just, the word just never came across our minds. I think we always had a sort of long-term-ish vision for what we wanted to do, but certainly not to where we've ended up.
And how's that changed then over a period of 12 years and a week?
I mean, it's changed hugely. And I think, we are, it's constantly evolving. I think I first probably realistically put my full kind of attention on sustainability towards the end of 2019. It was the first time where I was like, this is something that we absolutely need to be ahead of, on top of, at the forefront of. And, I think I attended my first zero carbon forum event in something like February 2020 at Nando's in Putney. And and that was all kind of cool. This is exciting, sitting in a room with KFC talking about chicken. Don't know anything about it, but great. And suddenly we were, sustainability went right back down the list again in March 2020 when COVID came along. So yeah, I think that's a real truism is, sustainability is hugely important. But there are moments in your sort of business life, I guess, when it will just instantly drop down the list. And I think, it's a problem for humanity in general is how do you get people whose problems are real and, right in front of their nose, think of something that's so big and so hard to conceive and so far away potentially and all that stuff. It's a problem. It's a huge problem.
I've been in sustainability close to 20 years and I've come across this frequently. And when I was younger and angrier, it used to really bother me. And I've come to terms with the reality that this is one of many things that are on people's plates. Yeah. And particularly the more senior you get, the more there are some very serious competing priorities. And it's not that it doesn't matter or that you don't care. Yeah. It's just that it's hard to get it right amongst everything else that's going on. And that absolutely is true.
Absolutely. Yeah. So but I think increasingly we're embedding it into the business. We've just redone our sort of brand purpose document, and for the first time in 5 years, and for the first time it has a dedicated. There were 3 pillars. There are now 4 pillars. One of which is sustainability and the planet and community, and how what are we doing to kind of be leading on that. As you know, so it's a fundamental part of what we're about as a business, for written down, carved into the stone tablet for the first time.
That's fantastic. I think, again, in my experience, just getting your governance structure right and having it written down as an important part of who we are and what we do.
100%.
Why has that changed? What's the thing that changed that course?
I think it's just, as I have become more interested in it, as I've had more enlightened conversations with other members of the forum and with Johnny Lockett, who you know well, who works with us, you realize how important this is for, obviously from a kind of short-term point of view, for customers who are increasingly asking about it and want to make sure that we're doing our best, but also just for the long-term sustainability of the business. We are still very much a business that focuses on suppliers based in southern Italy.
Yep.
And we need to be working with those guys who've rebuilt relationships up over 10 years.
Yeah, right.
With these people. How do we work together for the next 10 years to make sure that, what is probably one of the most under pressure areas of Europe in terms of desertification, is that the word?
Yeah. Last couple of years has been desperately hot and dry.
Yeah. I feel it on the few times I go to Naples every year. It's like, Jesus, this is hotter than it was.
When it's impacted yields, particularly tomato production, olive oil production.
We've felt it in tomatoes. We've definitely had some more difficult conversations around tomatoes than we've ever had. It always was kind of like the easy one of the big three: flour, cheese, tomatoes.
Yeah.
Tomatoes was like the absolute no-brainer. It's kind of all done. It's all in cans, waiting to go. That's probably been the one with the most kind of supply issues of the last
interesting.
two years.
And I think one of the ways that I think increasingly we think about sustainability for good reason is not just what impact am I having, but what impact is climate change having on me?
Yeah.
And that's now written in through European legislation. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, now says it's a double materiality impact assessment. So what's my impact and what's its impact on me?
Yes.
And I think for your three major commodities there, tomatoes, I think, is probably the one that's at highest risk.
Yeah. We have gone to southern Italy and have built relationships to bring the best of southern Italy to you. And that's what we need to continue to do, I think. And that is our sort of brand promise, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's how do we continue to do that and deliver against that promise whilst also making it better?
Yeah. Can I ask you about B-Corp? You're one of few hospitality businesses that have gone for and got B-Corp status. Why did you do that?
I think I was very conscious that we needed to make sure this was at the front of the agenda, and also very conscious that, I'm certainly not an expert in, how to be a better business. This is the only business I've ever run. I have no context of what good looks like. And so I was really excited when I first discovered about B-Corp that, someone had provided a framework that actually really aligned with what I wanted Pete's Pilgrims to be about, that I guess they'd done the sort of hard yards in terms of figuring out what is good, what should get the points, and what does make you stand out in a corporate world. And so to have that framework presented to you and be like, this is how you can be better was really exciting. And I think that is exactly how I see it. And I think increasingly the business sees it of probably when we first presented to the business, it was like, cool, how do we get that badge? And then that'll be done, move on. But actually increasingly it's like, no, we needed to get 80 points. We got 81.7.
Okay.
Let's not.
And did you need to make some changes to get to 81? Your first pass down in 60s, 70s.
Everything from changing the Articles of Association to be more about, better governance structures, more about, basically getting the shareholders to acknowledge that it's not just about them.
Yes.
That's where it starts. And that's probably one of the hardest conversations you're having.
Yeah.
All the way down to, every single person, how they separate waste and how we, deal with energy, how we reduce energy usage. It really involves. I've never worked on a project in Pete's Pilgrims in all the 12 years we've done it that has involved every member of the team working together for one clear common goal. But I think the point is that having got the goal, it's now, to my mind anyway, maybe this just says more about me, is just expose where our gaps are rather than, it was sort of like a very brief high five and then cool, 81.7 is good. I wouldn't describe it as great. Next.
Yeah, but that's good stuff, right?
Yeah,
hey,
100%.
Good result. Now let's go again.
And it will become our B Corp score will become or has become our key KPI for our sustainability pillar.
Right.
So obviously it crosses everything from charities to communities to sustainability, obviously, to how we treat the team. So making sure that score is always moving forward and that everyone in every team is aware of what elements they need to improve on to improve our score is how we're going to work with B Corp going forward.
How are you working with the forum? How are we supporting you?
I think fundamentally working with them in two ways, with you. We have Johnny, who I keep mentioning, who I think is working with you on a much more kind of, I'm going to use the word day to day, which slightly undermines it, but yeah, in terms of using your platforms and your tools, and we're doing our second carbon footprint with you. Johnny having identified that he felt like you were the best provider in the market for that. The bit that I love is going into a room with the leaders in this industry in this area, so the sustainability leaders across a number of brands, and talking to them about what they're doing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, how can we learn from their stuff. We hosted a sort of small to medium-sized business gathering in our Selfridges site, a couple of weeks back, and the amount of stuff I personally got out of that, I've just chatted to people like, I've done this thing with Cap Energy, monitoring energy. It's been great. You should totally do it. That's now moving forward our end. Okay. Conversations back to them about working with different suppliers and how that's worked. And I've said it before, I've said it again, hospitality superpower is conversing between ourselves.
And that's really great to hear that the conversations you've had have actually produced actionable stuff for you. You've taken stuff forward. Because that's what we're about. Let's find 100%. Rather than you all having to work it out separately and make all those mistakes separately, well, let's find out how to do it really well, and then let's just all learn from that.
Yeah, and then so what we're saying, let's get the experts in their field to lead the way. So KFC should be telling us what the best chicken thing is. Not that we have chicken in our business, but if you did, probably good to get a white paper from them to be like, this is the shit we know about chicken. And it's just mad to me. I went to the one, wherever it was, last week, and sat there, I was like, so chatting to a lady about sustainability and all the stuff we're doing. And I was like, where are you from? She's like, McDonald's. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. I suspect they've probably got quite a lot of good stuff to learn from you.
Yeah, and that was a really important session for us. So that was a session on the transition. This language that's coming in now of if I recognise that my business is here and I recognise I need to be net zero over here, I need to transition. There's a lot of things that need to change, and that was exactly the discussion we had. Yeah,
no, it was good. It was really, really good session, and just some really bright, engaged, top of their game people in that room who are, if you can't learn from them, then you're looking at the wrong place.
And now it's a very well-trodden path, and we've got a very kind of strong structure around it: measure, plan, reduce. And I mean, that's exactly where we've gone with you. Let's do the footprint in terms of the plan. There's learning from each other. There's also the climate action plan, which outlines for you exactly everything that you can do, and then we can follow that well-trodden path, that process to get some
measure, plan, reduce. Yeah.
Let's talk about sourcing. So we know from the data that we have that the food and drink that we buy is about 70% of our impact as a sector. We know it's particularly high for meat and dairy. We know that a lot of the products that we source are at risk from climate change, heat and drought in particular. So we need to make some changes in the way that we operate, the food that we buy and the food that we serve, and the way that we do it. Tell me about how you're thinking about that and what you're doing on that.
I mean, obviously sourcing is a huge part of what we're about. And I think we've worked, I think, harder than most, maybe, to build real relationships with our original suppliers who... And
this is all Italian suppliers, isn't it? It's a huge part of the brand identity.
The big three are tomatoes, flour, mozzarella. Now, obviously, in terms of impact, it goes in the exact opposite way, I think. So mozzarella is probably about 40% of our total impact as a business. Then flour is still pretty, it's big, if not as big, but it's a big one. And then tomatoes, I think. And like I say, in all three of those instances, we've worked with those suppliers directly, know the names of their people, know their kids' names, I've worked with them for a decade at least in most cases. And so that puts us in great shape in many ways, because we can have, some proper grown-up conversations with them. We've known them long enough. We're not but at the same time, you've got to walk that line of being a thorn in the side, but not a pain in the ass. We want to be, and I think those conversations have, some people have moved quicker on them, but I think where we're getting to, which is great, is kind of, what are the long-term solutions to this problem? I think what no one wants to do, and I had a really great conversation with our flour supplier particularly, saying, they have now put sustainability as one of the three pillars of their business.
Right.
They want to move forward with it. They see themselves fundamentally as blending experts. So they source grain from various places all over the world in order to attain a flour. They blend the grain, then mill the grain in order to obtain a flour that has exactly the right protein, water absorption, all those kind of things working for it. And their point of view is, obviously they can move over time to more regenerative wheat to improve that product. What they don't want to do is come out with a sort of, cool, here's a bag with a 30% less carbon sticker on it that compromises the quality of the flour. And I totally buy that. Like the worst outcome here is that we end up with something that's worse, but maybe more sustainable. That's, it's just not going to have potentially the long term. People will just revert to the better stuff. So it is really about those long-term conversations. Some of them are taking longer. Some of them require more input from us. We've done a full LCA on our mozzarella, and I think that's started to provoke some interesting questions. So yeah, it's about kind of constantly working away at those big three, whilst also taking the wins where we can. So we've almost entirely eradicated beef from our menu. Although my brother, bless him, did a lasagna special last month, which was absolutely fantastic and had beef in it. And we actually used a regenerative beef product from, who are the guys that Honest use? They're called, I can't remember.
Ethical Butcher?
Can't remember. I should look that up. I'll try and remember. Anyway, we did use what was described as a regenerative beef product, and it was great. But the point is, use less beef. And when we are doing that, there is no beef other than a halal pepperoni. Currently, there is no beef on our menu, on our main menu, and 60% of our menu choices already are meat free. So that's a really good story. But we can always do better, and it is about identifying those, I think, interesting wins. So, like, one of my favorite stories of ours is our basil. So I discovered that we flew basil in from Israel quite a lot of the year because of it's not being grown in Genoa all year round. So obviously that's a huge air miles situation. Basil is kind of, has a short shelf life and stuff. Anyway, we really got into that. And through working with Y Food, we met these guys called Harvest London, who were looking to start a vertical farm. Anyway, long story short, we became their first customer. They opened the vertical farm, and now all of our basil is grown in a vertical farm in Leighton, delivered throughout London in electric bikes, and has had a huge impact. I mean, it's just been one of those crazy win-wins. Like, the quality is better, it lasts for longer. We were able to choose the variant and make sure it was perfect for what we wanted. Air miles are hugely reduced, and it's kind of opened them up to hopefully grow their business and take the next step. And they're going to start to look to grow other stuff for us that they can.
Yeah.
So it's been a really, really nice project, and not all of them are that. I say it was a quick win. It was probably 2 years worth of work to get it off the ground, but it's in now and it's working. We haven't got the magic solution for mozzarella yet.
And I think for lots of things, there probably isn't a magic solution yet, or maybe at all. But that basil example is a great example of the solution, isn't it? Because it ticks all boxes: better quality, lower impact, price.
Yeah. I mean, so it's slightly more expensive, but because it lasts longer, we get a bigger yield, basically.
Right, okay.
So it actually works out better for everyone.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
And I think
lower waste.
Yeah, lower waste.
Yeah.
Much lower.
Yeah.
Much lower. Because it been, it's literally grown, harvested, and it's in the store within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas I was coming from Israel, your best hope would be 72, probably longer.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's the point, is it didn't compromise on quality.
Yeah.
And it really is important to us that the pizza is great. And
so I've got a challenge for you and your brother then. Not compromise on quality, specials, insects on pizza.
I know where you're going with this. So we tried insects on pizza. So we do, in our Selfridges store, we do a Middle Eastern lamb-inspired pizza, because a huge number of our customers in our store are halal and from the Middle East and what have you. And it's a great pizza, really kind of really nice kind of lamb maheen spice type vibes. Anyway, when we had our gathering, we replaced the lamb for cricket mince from Yumbug, and tested it on a sort of willing group of 30 to 40 people at that event. And I think, honestly, if you hadn't told them, no one would have called it out, first of all. I mean, the flavor was still there, the
texture is there.
Texture is there. You really, really wouldn't have jumped on it. Obviously, I would say 20% of people were like, I'm definitely not eating that.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to try it. I would say, the people that tried it, 80+% were like, that's great, I would 100%. And I think it's 17 times less carbon than lamb, was what they said.
Yeah.
So look, it's obviously phenomenal. Would I put it on the menu? Yes. If we put a cricket mince pizza on the menu, and this is my brother's point, he's like, you're making the problem worse, because you'll just be sat with a whole load of cricket mince at the beginning of the day that's still there at the end of the day. It won't sell. People won't buy it. So
I think it's an interesting one because for me, as someone who doesn't eat meat, I've then had access to this delicious pizza that I wouldn't otherwise have had access to.
Yeah.
But, okay.
But I think the point I'm trying to make is not that we shouldn't do it, and we will find a way to do it. But if we just bang on the menu as like, try this cricket mint pizza, you're coming out for your one pizza of the week or maybe of the month, you're probably not going to order the cricket mint pizza.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of get that, the wheels turning on that? Because it is genuinely revolutionary as a product without just making something that people just won't buy.
If you've got one bit of advice then for anyone on there, wherever they are on their sustainability journey, what would it be?
The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is a thing to live your life by, for sure. Because the amount of times you're like, if only I had, but the second best time is now. It's so great. So I can't believe I just said that. But all I'm trying to say is like, just get cracking on doing something. Even the tiniest win, even if you literally go out to Robert Dias and change all your light bulbs to LCD light bulbs. If that is a win, like for your quarter a year, great. But there are so many little wins that can be delivered quite quickly through the team, and every little win is a good step.
I think it works, cheesy as it is, works really well. Not just for those incremental wins along the way, but also for the transformational thing. It will take 10 years. Doing an LCA for your cheese is a good first step. What it does is it gives you the evidence to go and have an informed conversation with your supplier. There's a whole load of cultural change, mindset change. And then there's a whole load of operational change. It's going to take a long time. So to that thing of, well, it's going to take a long, yes, to do it now. Now's the best. If you didn't do it 10 years ago, now's absolutely the best. Thom, thank you.
Thank you. It's good stuff, and thank you for all the hard work you're doing to bring everyone together. It's good stuff. It's
empowering. Love it.